one other thing that's come a long way since back then is our wardrobes.
Yes, the wardrobes have definitely come a long way. As I mentioned, I knew JG, which to know JG is to love JG, I will say, because it was a whole personality. So I'm talking in third person, and sometimes at 8 o'clock in the morning, walking into the office, I questioned, did you just walk over here from your nightclub job? Because the shirts were a little flashy.
When you wear dark colors.
I don't know that they were dark colors. There was some, I think I specifically saw some pinks and purples, and I remember you said, no, it's periwinkle. And I was like, that's a very iridescent periwinkle color.
That was a very confusing time in my life. You ready?
I'm ready.
This is Full Disclosure presented by Exclusent Inc. And today I have my former colleague that has become, I would say, a close friend.
Yeah, I think close friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stephanie Howser.
Well, thanks for having me, Jordan. I appreciate it.
We've been talking about doing this for a while, and now
we have. Yeah. It was always kind of a, I don't know, pipe dream, I guess. We were just maybe after a couple cocktails, we were all just talking about doing it.
We both started working together at a large $30 billion human capital firm. We're actually both servicing the same large enterprise level customer. Mm-hmm. And we were at just such different places in our lives.
Yeah, 9 years ago. I joined the company really knowing nothing about staffing or recruiting. Yeah. I'm not sure how much you've shared in the past, but obviously you kind of come from like a family of people being in the industry. So yeah, I was brought on to support the same account that you were, which I think I was the third person to probably support that account in like a year's time period or so. And so when I came in, I don't think you thought I was going to last very long, because that was kind of how it had been in the past. So I had to win you over a little bit. I think that it took a little bit of me just kind of being like, okay, I'm going to grind this out, and I'm here to work. And then once you saw that I was actually going to stick around, then you definitely warmed up.
Well, you know what? 9 years ago, I was like way more extreme version kind of what I am now. I'd like to think I've matured a little bit over the years.
I knew you as JG.
No,
not Jordan. Yeah.
I didn't realize how much of a dick I was a lot of times.
I wouldn't say that's how you were. I think you were just very focused and driven, and you had very specific goals and direction, and you kind of were tunnel vision on that. And I think we just had very different selling styles. So that was the difference between us coming in.
I think we had been working together a year at least, and for a while. And I'm glad you told me JG, you didn't like me, and because you didn't even realize the vibe that you're giving off sometimes.
Yeah, I can usually win people over after enough amount of time, break through those layers. And I remember when you met your now wife, and I loved her the minute I met her, and we became really good friends, and met both your kids now and held them when they were babies. And so, it's 9 years has flown by, I feel like.
Supporting such a large organization, you're both sharing the same pool of buyers. I mean, there is a competitive aspect.
Yes.
That I think we kind of figured out as we went.
Yeah. I think it was probably your biggest concern is you were very clear that you had some relationships already established, and I was not to contact them or have any sort of cross there. But it was such a large client that I wanted to play nice in the sandbox too. And after a while in working together, you actually realized that I might be able to support some of the hiring managers, maybe not better, but just have a better relationship with them just because of my selling style. Yeah. And then vice versa. There was a couple people that I knew I wasn't getting any traction with. I wasn't able to really kind of break into some of those departments, but I knew you might be able to. So I think from that, there was like definitely times where we kind of help support each other or work together on strategy. And I think that's super important to have in this industry because you can get burnt out really quickly. I struggled with hearing no a lot in the beginning. And then I kind of changed that mindset. It's like, no is really just like not right now.
Yeah.
You know, there's still an opportunity. At least they're still talking to you.
Yeah.
Yes, it might not be the yes that we want, but eventually it could be. You got to kind of keep those relationships. So,
yeah. I mean, these are the top companies in the world,
right?
You know, from revenue, from every Fortune 20 companies, right? And there's no more space in our industry where there's more competition than in what we both kind of jumped in to. And that was our first experience in the industry. So we didn't know any differently.
Right.
But you talk about the differences in our selling style.
Yes.
And I think we're both relationship driven, both been able to build the careers that we have because we do things the right way, and you know, we don't burn bridges, which, you know, when you're dealing with people on all sides of a transaction, there's just so many pressure points that, you know, opportunities for things to go wrong.
Yes.
But we do have different styles in terms of what we really enjoy. Like I love the chase of getting deals done.
Yes, you do.
Now I want it to benefit everybody, right? But I like feed off that energy.
I do like closing deals as well, too. I think everybody loves to make money at the end of the day. For me, it's really about the relationships that I'm able to build and being able to solve like a solution, not only for a client, but also like a candidate. Like I gravitated more towards having candidates that were super appreciative of me finding them opportunities and feeling like I made an impact. And then obviously helping out my clients, but the competition against like, you know, the other vendors in the agency and like playing the game and that piece of it, sometimes I did struggle with. You're right. Like, I think I have a little bit more of a softer sell. We were both top producers, not to say that we weren't, but it's like some people I think enjoy like writing their name up on that leaderboard and putting the money down a little bit more. For me, that was always a little bit awkward.
Well, it's awkward for me.
I've recruited for a lot of different industries, and tech recruiting was first, but for the first like 6 months, I had no idea what I was talking about. You know, there are so many new tools and technologies that come out that I have absolutely no idea what they mean or how they do, but I'm not a developer. I'm not an engineer. I don't need to be. I just need to know how to find those people.
In tech, you have to not only know the tech skill sets and what technical people typically want and how they think, but you need to also kind of be like an amateur immigration specialist, because if a lot of the talent is H-1B, you know, or they're on work visas, like knowing how that works, and especially if you're placing developers or architects,
or even working with their third-party employers and stuff. I think the staffing industry, it's really about, you need to know enough to be dangerous, but you don't have to be like an expert at any one thing. So that's kind of how I would approach conversations, is like, I'm an expert in knowing my client and what their pain points are and what their needs are. Over time, you learn more about whatever industry you're recruiting for. But right off the bat, I don't think that you need to have that acumen. But there does take a lot of like self-knowledge. Like there's a lot of times where I was watching YouTube videos or I'm Googling something. It's, you know, or I'm asking ChatGPT to explain, you know, X, Y, and Z software like I'm a 5-year-old, just so that I can understand it a little bit better and then have those conversations with my client.
I mean, I don't know how you guys split the recruiting cycle, but to us, it's everything that happens before the initial call with the recruiter, sourcing, and then everything after, right? You know, continuing to build buy-ins, coordinating the interviews, whatever. Closing, negotiating offers, blah, blah, blah. To me, all of the AI that we've incorporated is in the sourcing piece. And if companies aren't doing that, like you're just not going to be able to compete anymore. But I don't know, I feel very strongly that once the interaction happens, the initial interaction, a live conversation between, then we're in a people business.
Yes. I agree. I do love AI for a lot of things like some automation and, helping craft messaging that can get people excited. But when it gets down to like screening the people, I do still think that a person needs to be screening.
We've implemented MetaView, which I don't know if you've used it on
I haven't used that.
calls. It'll transcribe and summarize, and it'll literally have the question that you asked them, and then it'll spit out like this is the gist of what they said. So that's like it enables us to work more efficiently, but it's not replacing what we're doing.
Right.
I always thought that starting at the second largest company in our industry had a lot of benefits. Not only like obviously the people that you meet, but you're just involved in so many different transactions that you build a muscle of predicting behavior, staying ahead of kind of potholes and challenges that you know are probably going to happen. And that I think is a big part of our industry, right? Is like figuring out what makes sense for both sides.
Yes.
And then kind of predicting what areas could be friction points and staying ahead of them or just getting out of the introduction altogether. When you look at the things that candidates do or can do in this current market, because you're still excellent at what you do.
I think in 2021 and 2022, that was a great market to be in staffing. Candidates could ask for inflated salaries and maybe not have as much experience, but have more of that transferable experience, and they were still getting the job. Now, with the unemployment being lower, to make yourself stand out as a candidate, I always tell everybody, I was like, make sure you're tailoring your resume for every single job that you're looking for and do your research. There's generative AI, there's ChatGPT, there's Gemini, anything to make it, because at the end of the day, a recruiter clients or an ATS system is going to look at a keyword search. So to even get looked at as an applicant, you've got to make sure that you're tailoring that like resume and your background to that, and make sure that your LinkedIn profile also matches your resume. That's a big thing, discrepancy that I see is that like dates are different or there's not as much information on LinkedIn. They should really be like a mirror of each other. Once you've gotten past that hurdle and you're in front of the client, I think that you really have to just do your research. Go in there, know about the company, know about their mission, know how you as a person are going to come in and help out the bottom line from day one. Like obviously there's going to be a learning curve there as you ramp up. But if you can, in an interview, demonstrate to the hiring manager how you're going to help solve some of their problems, that's what they're looking for. As a staffing partner, recruiter, we can only go so far. But as a candidate, they have to be willing to also sell themselves and not leave anything on the table in an interview.
It's a good point. And like, it's not always a numbers game. Like that's what I feel like in this one-click apply, like a lot of the Indeed, even LinkedIn now, it's so easy for candidates to apply to jobs.
Right.
That they'll sit there and apply to 100 in an afternoon, but just doing the bare minimum, going to 20 companies, tailoring your resume, speaking in their language, that's going to get you a lot farther than, spraying.
And I think leverage the network that you have because like you said, there are people that thousands of applicants that go through. So how are you going to stand out? If you have relationships at those companies that you're targeting, leverage those relationships, have people make introductions for you, start engaging with that company's like content online on LinkedIn. There are candidates that I see that will just blast their resume around, apply to positions multiple times, and I have had hiring managers who have said, I've seen this candidate's resume probably 80 times already from like different staffing company, and they don't have an interest in that because then it also seems that candidate probably doesn't really have like a clear direction in terms of where they're wanting to go or what they're wanting to do in their career. And they're just kind of like blind applying.
That's a good point. Our clients have to infer so much because you can't possibly ask every question.
Yeah.
You know, the story of your career arc and what's gotten you here and why a certain opportunity makes sense for you. If that doesn't line up, then it's not going to work. So I think that's an element that a lot of people don't think about. Think about what you're saying and why you want to work there. And like, does that make sense to you? Because if
Right.
it doesn't, it's not going to make sense to anybody else, probably.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying, is like really finding out what their motivating factors are.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where I'll talk with candidates and the first question out of their mouth is, how much is this paying?
Yeah.
Like they just want the money. And like, I will gladly divulge that information, you know, but if that's the first question out of someone's mouth is about like the compensation, then it's a little bit of a yellow flag for me where I'm like, is this really somebody that's looking to make a move? And it's like, or if another company comes around and offers them more money, are they going to jump ship and make a move to that company?
Yeah. And I also think the misconception too about it, because nobody tells the market like the inner workings of the agency recruiting world, but like employers are our client, right? They're who pays our bills. They tell us, go out, help us find XYZ. We consult from a scope and discovery perspective on the front end. Yeah, we represent candidates, and it goes without saying it's in our best interest to help them along the way.
Absolutely.
But there is a misconception of agency recruiting and like outplacement, like resume writing services and that kind of deal. We get a lot of those requests from candidates. And I don't know if you have candidates that will be like, oh, well, how much do I owe you? You know, and it's like, no, we don't like nothing.
Yeah,
right?
we don't typically have like, yes, on the candidate side, you know, the clients are the ones that are going to ultimately pay that placement fee. I will definitely give recommendations for how to improve resumes, tips for how to interview. But honestly, with like generative AI and things like that nowadays, you don't need to go have your resume built by a company. Like you can do that. The resume is really just to open up the door for the conversation. You don't want to sell everything on that resume. Like you want to get the interview. So craft the resume in a way that you're going to get the interview.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You're not going to get the job.
You're not going to get the job. There are plenty of people who I've seen who are great on paper and, you know, don't interview well, or they misrepresented themselves on their interview because they might have inflated things a little bit. I think a good rule of thumb is like the humble brag, like highlight your achievements that you have, but make them quantifiable as well too. So providing as much like data points as you can and how that solved a problem at the company you're at, versus almost like too boastful or too braggy and just exaggerating results or numbers as well too. We don't want to do that.
So we both have moved from largest agencies in the world to boutique shops. The learning and development piece is different. I know it's something that you've been passionate about. Frankly, something that I just... Because, like, you know, you do have that element of, like, we're not doing super technical stuff around here.
Right.
So, like, you know, anybody that can talk to people can do it. But we both know that's not true. Larger agencies, big ships take a long time and a lot to move. A lot of times they'll overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
That is, it to me is a large reason why in our industry the lion's share of market share is made up by the boutique shops, whereas in most other industries it's like the top 10 dominate total, you know, market share. I think you're uniquely qualified to talk about this. To me, our industry is reading people and helping put them in a position that is going to highlight the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
But the training and how to get somebody to do that, what percentage do you think is just you either have or you don't, or what percentage can be kind of curated?
When it comes down to processes, that can all be taught. You know, each staffing company is going to operate a little bit different than the other ones. But like you said, at the end of the day, we kind of all do the same thing. When I am looking at who we are bringing into an organization, and then I'm going to train to be a salesperson or a recruiter, there are some like innate qualities that I'm looking for that can't be taught, unfortunately. And so I am looking for somebody who has the capability to build relationships and the rapport, somebody who's coachable for sure, someone who is able to take feedback and criticism constructively, is okay with hearing no, because in the beginning it is a grind. And I'm always very transparent with people who are joining the industry, is that there are high highs and there are low lows, and it's how you get through those that I think will weed out some people that it's not the right industry for them. I do like people who are like money motivated and driven. Athletes coming into the industry usually works well. They've had some structure and like some discipline, but there's also been like a competitive edge to that as well. But yeah, you have to be able to talk to people, and you have to not be afraid of like, I think it has changed a lot since we both started out in the industry. Like when we both started in the industry, it was just pick up the phone and dial, just call. We'd be in like a bullpen style environment and somebody would be like, hit the phones. And it was just like Wolf of Wall Street almost feel. No, I actually really enjoyed our group, but it was that type of like hustler mentality. It still is to a degree, but you got to get creative about how you're connecting with people. Like I still do believe in old fashioned cold calling. I think that is still really important. But it's more of a longer sell, and you've got to be able to be in it. And because you're working with people and people are unpredictable, you're not just out there like selling a product where you know exactly how it's going to function and how it's going to work. And you can get in front of like, some of these intangibles. But I think that if you're somebody who wants to come in and like look at it as more of like, I want to build a relationship with my clients. I want to help them solve their problems. And you authentically want to do that. That's somebody that I would talk to. People want to work with people that they like, because every staffing agency pretty much at this point has the same capabilities. So, I'm going to work with Jordan, or I'm going to work with Stephanie because I like what they have to offer, not just the company that they work for.
Well, from working with me, how informal I talk to customers, which like, for especially like corporate America, people that have been working at large companies for a long time, like they just have like they just talk in corporate cliche speak a lot of times.
Corporate lingo.
But specifically for the interview process, that is such a huge mistake, right? Because you want to disarm candidates as much as you can. I know we've all kind of fallen victim, whether hiring internally for our team or for our clients, where people know kind of what you want to hear.
Right.
A lot of times. And in an interview setting, right, like especially a recruiter that just wants to get a deal done, they're just checking boxes. But they're not really digging in on anything.
Yes.
And those are the situations that typically will, kind of come back to bite you. If hiring managers can make it seem like, hey, we're just meeting and kind of just shooting the shit, that's where you're going to get the clearest picture of whoever you're interviewing and what they might do or not do once they're kind of in your office.
When I'm working with hiring managers and clients, because I work with both on the side, and I know you do too. I work with both hiring managers and candidates. Sometimes our hiring managers need a little bit of coaching as to like how to interview. And I always try and say like, keep it consistent across the board. Like, yes, you're going to connect with certain people on different levels, but try and have like the same kind of line of questioning, or at least like, if you do have some red flags or some hesitancy about a candidate, like it's okay to dig in there a little bit and just ask, more than just the surface level questions. Just like the hiring manager is interviewing the candidates are interviewing that hiring manager to see if this is going to be a good fit at this company and, and if the culture is there. So I think if you guys can both bring your authentic self, the hiring manager and the candidate, to the conversation, you're going to get a better feel for how you'd be able to work together in the future.
And it's not like you need candidates to, share all their deepest, darkest secrets. But like you need to have a clear perspective on what are their motivators, what do they actually want, not what they say they want, like what do they actually want? Short term, long term. And if that stuff doesn't line up, then the rest of it, like to me, doesn't really matter.
When I'm talking with like candidates, and that's kind of where I started, is like, well, what's prompting you to be looking at something else? What are you really looking for out of your next opportunity? I'll ask them almost the same type of question like multiple times, because I think if you just ask somebody like one time, you're going to get a surface level answer. Yeah. But if you keep asking or you keep kind of picking away at it, you'll get like the root cause of what they're looking for, or what they're trying to avoid. I sometimes will talk them out of an opportunity and see if they're really, like, how really engaged are you? Based off what you're saying, this may not be the fit for you because of this or X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And then based off their response, that lets me know, this is a good candidate to represent. This is a candidate that's committed. I think that's a benefit of working with an agency too, is that we can do a lot of that vetting on the front end. Yeah,
which is a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Until you've done it, like. Yeah,
I think sometimes there's that misconception that we just like look at a resume and, like you said, just kind of check the box. Okay, they've got this. But I'm spending, hours with a candidate before I even consider putting them in front of a client. And I don't send over anybody and everybody. It's a very, very small margin of people that get over there.
We both have had a lot of people that we came up with that went to be in-house recruiters. Totally different job.
Very different,
For a lot of people, that's a great move. And I think there are a lot of different benefits. But that's why I mean, for a number of reasons, always stayed on the agency side. Because if you're an in-house recruiter, you have one opportunity that or two, but it's just all at the same company typically.
Yeah.
Whereas the flexibility that we have to say, like, all right, we're working with 10 companies that are kind of all hiring in a similar pool. Mm-hmm. And so we can let the talent's desires and goals and blah, blah, blah kind of lead where we're putting them.
Yeah. Those MPC, most placeable candidates. We love acronyms in this industry as well, too, which I don't know how I feel always about the acronyms. It doesn't save a lot of time in the conversation.
Would you agree that the people that think they just absolutely crushed the interview, like, oh, I crushed that interview, I'm going to get an offer, no questions asked, a lot of times those are the people that don't get the job. I mean, confidence is good, but like...
Confidence is good, but it's that someone who's mastered that humble brag, like I said, is the person that will likely get the job. Yeah, I've had that happen on a number of occasions. Actually, one of my favorite placements, I had a client who was interviewing 3 of my candidates for a director level position on their team. And I had 3 candidates. I had 2 who I felt really strongly about, who had the experience, who had done the exact job, and I knew could kind of come in and make an impact right away. And then I had another candidate who loved the personality of this person, and she was a little bit more junior and didn't have as much experience as the other 2 that I had interviewing, but I saw enough of the transferable skills that I presented. And then the client called me right after the 3 interviews. They were panel style. They're pretty intense. And I was thinking it was going to go one way, and the hiring manager's like, no, I want to make an offer to this person. And when I called the candidate, I never lead with like, I have an offer for you. No, I always want to just kind of see where they're at, get realistic feel for how the interview went, what their take on it was. And when I had called this candidate, when she answered the phone, I could tell she was crying. And I was like, is everything okay? And she was like, I am so sorry, but I completely bombed that interview. And she was really upset. And I was like, well, tell me what happened. Walk me through the conversation. And she's like, the hiring manager then, threw me this curveball question. And I was like, well, how'd you answer it? And she's like, I was honest. I said, I don't have that experience. But here's what I would do in that situation. And she's like, so I'm on my way to Chick-fil-A to get some chicken nuggets to cheer me up.
You have an offer.
I know I have the offer. And I was like, all right, well, you went through the drive-thru already? I was like, are you pulled over at a parking spot? She's like, yes. And I was like, okay, well, I have something to tell you. And I led with the offer. And then she starts like hysterically laughing. And she's like, oh my gosh, like I did not think I did that. And I was like, the hiring manager did kind of throw you that curveball question on purpose. They wanted to see how you would react.
Yeah.
And the other two people that interviewed, they kind of acted like they hadn't had that experience because the hiring manager knew nobody had this experience, but they just kind of came through it like really boastful that they could do it. And they just kind of like eased on and just said, yes, I could do that.
Yeah.
Whereas he's like, I wanted to see what their thought process was. And she's the only one out of them that actually like was humble enough to explain, like she didn't have the experience. We turned her sad chicken nuggets into celebration nuggets.
Ayo.
And now every time I go to Chick-fil-A, I think about celebration nuggets.
If you're self-aware enough and you're smart enough and you're analytical enough, you have to know a lot to know what you messed up, in my opinion. Like people that don't know.
You do have to be self-aware.
Yeah,
in that piece.
yeah.
And anyone coming out of an interview, when I talk to them, if they can't self-reflect and they're just telling me like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I really liked so-and-so. And I'm like, no, what questions were you asked? How did you respond to them? Like, were there any that were challenging? Why were they challenging?
Yeah.
What did you say you were going to do in order to get up to speed? You know, like I will never just put in my notes, like interview went great.
Yeah. And the other thing, and this is just the last like thing that will genuinely help, just talent. We'll just say candidates' talent.
Yeah.
If you're working with an agency, ask what is their relationship with this client? Because we're your representative, right, at that company, and you and I know it could be the same candidate, but if the client kind of doesn't really like JG, like they're just kind of like putting up with him, but they love you, that candidate does kind of look a little bit differently to them. And obviously within reason, but that's an element that because so many candidates get so frustrated with recruiters, in a lot of cases for good reason, but a lot of times because they're recruiting them for a client that they don't really have a relationship with, or they don't really have all the details, or blah 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 blah. So that's an element that just people don't think about asking that will help kind of calibrate your expectations.
Transparency is the best policy. I'll be very transparent with you. You be very transparent with me. Even if I don't have updates, I'm going to give you a no update. I am always really transparent about, how long I've worked with that client, other team members that maybe I placed on that team. If it's our first go round with them, I will tell them like this is a newer relationship. It's earlier on for us as well too. And then there are some accounts that I support that my company supports where we don't have direct hiring manager contact. It's going through a tool, a system, and we still are representing that candidate, but in those circumstances, sometimes it's still longer to get feedback, or sometimes we don't ever get feedback. So I will tell candidates that if that's the case as well, too, is like there's quite a bit of competition on this position. And, I'm going to do my best to represent you, but I want to set good expectations for that candidate as well.
That's why you're so good at what you do.
Well, thank you. Flattery will get you everywhere, JG.
I've changed a lot.
You have changed a lot since we started. The compliments, I'll take the compliments all day long.
Cool. I remember when I first met my wife.
That's when I think there was the turning point in our relationship where it was like, I don't know, how long had we worked together? Maybe like a year at that point when you met your wife, or now wife, and that's when I knew like I've proven myself, and I'm not only his coworker, but now his friend. And when I met your now wife, I was just like, this is the one. She's a keeper.
Caroline's she's a school teacher.
Yes, she's
like the opposite of me, and I feel like if like too type A, like hard chart, like it would have been a disaster. Like if I met somebody like me, like it would have been.
And I started as a school teacher too, so that like Caroline and I bonded over that, and but I was just like, she is so sweet. I was like, I don't know. Maybe she's out of your league. I think that
she is out of my league. Well, now let's talk about your love life.
Next question, please.
Hey, Yates, maybe some people will slide in your DMs when they see this. Don't slide
Don't slide in the
Stephanie's
DMs.
please.
That doesn't look.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, it's
Especially
not
not
a
on
great look.
LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Like, people
not
like,
on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not a place
Yeah.
for. Yeah,
we just babbled for 47 minutes.
you can tell time. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think it was a good chat.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Love to come back at some point
Hey.
if I'm invited. We'll see
Yeah,
how the
we'll
we'll see how the
see.
reception goes.
Yeah, we'll see.